that are made for women. There's pretty much specific scholarships for everyone.
That kind of sounds like a deflection.
I did really enjoy today, but my boyfriend, I told him I'd be done by 10, so I do have to go.
I bet.
As soon as I showed up, I am the
rage quit. Rage quit.
Oh, we can do it again.
Super villain.
Rage quit.
But it's
Welcome back to the channel. Shout out to the Lapeef Network. Man, did they have a great conversation with Pearl Davis and a few people over there. The conversation got heated. They got on the conversation of black fatigue, and Pearl started getting really risky with the things that she had to say. She started saying some really slick things. Usually, the things that Pearl has to say, since I'm typically in agreement with it, a lot of times I don't give her a lot of pushback, but I am forced to this time. She was saying a lot of stuff. She was getting very candid, and then Saint in the Center pulled up to the live stream, and then all of a sudden she had to leave the live stream, and it was very suspicious, and it's just really not a good look. I feel the way that she ran off the panel, I think it was pretty questionable, but I'm gonna leave it up to the audience. Hit the subscribe button, also hit the notification bell. Let's not waste 1 minute.
Restaurant. So at that time, black people, we don't have, even now, but in the 50s, you think, who owns cameras? Who owns media networks? So we don't. So even the people who interviewed him was white. But guess what happened to that man? They killed him days later just because he had the nerve to tell white people who asked him, well, how white people treat you, just for him to get killed by white people. So I don't want to hear no white person talk about black fatigue. Now, if you want to talk about the degradation of America, you want to talk about the lack of literacy in youth, you want to talk about just drugs in general, just immoral culture of Western culture, I'm all for that. But don't blame it on black people because we're only doing what was done to us.
All right, Pearl, you want to respond real quickly?
Well, yeah, I had a question. How does this work? Am I able, when they're talking, can we go back and forth like a conversation, or that's not allowed here? I'm okay with either. I just wasn't positive.
I mean, if you want to interject and if the person allows it, then that's fine. But if they say let me finish, then just allow them to finish. Then I'll just come back to you so you can respond.
Yeah, because you was doing every person. Like everybody went their turn. He went in row. We could see the panels. He went one by one. It was my turn.
Yeah. So again, I would say even in that interaction, I was very polite to you, where you automatically assumed the worst. So that kind of reiterates what I was talking about. The next argument I'm going to go through. So I'm gonna,
but what did I assume?
I'm gonna keep going. That's going to be gaslighting right there. So gaslight. Okay. Pretend you weren't doing what you did, which is totally fine. I'm a big girl. I can handle it. But
no, you
can't.
An
example of the black fatigue. Then you're saying you're blaming it on history. I just think goes back to white people are kind of tired of hearing excuses.
Of course you are.
Yeah, and it just.
Of course you are, but why?
I think black people, I'm not sure if we're ready to hear white people be honest about what they feel about anything racial. Shout out to Patrice O'Neal. He touched on this in some comedy specials and some different interviews. I think there'll come a time where white people can speak freely about how they feel about racial problems and things of that sort, but I think it's just too touchy right now. That was one thing that I took away from the conversation, that of course a lot of the things that Pearl got jumped on about, it was justified, but overall, I could feel in the panel there was like this touchiness with the black people on the panel to where Pearl had to walk on eggshells anyway, but it had a lot to do with our history with white people. And I think we don't talk about it a lot, how it's very difficult to have a conversation considering how dark our history is with white people, which I think speaks more to the black people's point on the panel, that there's like this silent disparagement that black people have to deal with that white people don't really recognize. But we're going to let the conversation speak for itself. Let's get back into it.
Crime is not a black issue.
White people commit more crime in this country than black people. So let's if we're going to speak facts, let's really stop talk statistics and stop just saying out anything, because like Illa said, you're just
black men are 20
you're not really spewing out any facts.
Black men are
over 50%. No. Let me
black
speak.
men are 20 times more violent than white men.
That's what I'm saying. You're showing.
At this point, Pearl speaking over the black woman who was trying to bring forth her argument. There were times throughout this conversation where Pearl expressed a disregard for the black perspectives on the panel, which didn't go well with how this conversation is ultimately going to end.
Hold on.
She said off the interruptions. She should have started interrupting people because we weren't interrupting nobody. But you want to interrupt, so now you've flown off the flow of the flow, which is what they do in real life. Go off the flow of everything.
Ella, hold on, you guys. Hold on.
She throwing up racist talking points.
Hold on. Let's just do one at a time. Okay, I got the timer. We're gonna do 3 minutes and 50-second timer. Go ahead, let Pearl finish. Getting back to Ella. Ella just remain on silent until she finished. Go ahead, Pearl. You're on mute. Let me take you off.
Felonies. 51% of arrests for murder in 2019 were black. Black women are 7% of the population, 39% of abortions. Felony conviction rate for black individuals is 61%. Black people are 13% of the population, but are incarcerated 38% of the time. 48% of black adults are obese. 54% of black women are obese. 1 in 4 black children born in 1990 had an imprisoned parent by age 14. Yeah, so if you want facts, there are some facts. Go ahead.
I respect Pearl's initiative to collect those statistics, but when you look deeper into it, white people are committing more crimes because they make up more of the population. And what they found is that people just commit crimes in the proximity of the area that they're in. It doesn't have anything to do with color necessarily. Where there are a lot of white people, there are crimes being committed. Where there are a lot of Hispanic people in one area, you have some crime in those areas. Where you have black people in some areas, you have crime happening. I think that there's a special focal on black people, especially considering that there is certainly some sort of, I don't want to say agenda, but you can tell that the media is more interested in propping up images of us being violent and dangerous than images of us being successful people and legitimate people. And of course, legitimate and successful black people exist. Non-threatening black people exist. And that's what the black people on the panel are trying to express. Pearl's has some isolated bad experiences with black people, and she's sort of blanketing the entire black community with it, and she's also using skewed statistics to go along with it. Let's get back into it.
Daily lives and observing just reality that black men, just by default, just by being black, are more violent than all other males walking around. How do we quantify that?
I would say number one, the data reflects it, and also my real lived experience. I would say that is what I have seen in real life. So,
all right.
I haven't seen a black man be violent in my years of experience. So what are we talking about?
Sorry to pause so much. Now, I personally have seen black men be violent in my experience. I think most of us black people have seen some black men be violent at some point. But I think Pearl is making a huge misstep here in thinking that her white experience and her white lens of what she's seen in regards to black men being violent is valid in the face of black people who've had to actually live as a black person in blackness. I think that when you're a white person in these conversations, there's a certain level of humility you have to carry, considering the fact that you aren't a black person. Now, that doesn't disqualify you from being able to have the conversation. I'm not one of those people who says you just shouldn't be able to have the conversation because you're white. I just think that white people should consider our history before they think about how comfortable they plop down in these conversations, metaphorically speaking. I think people like Pearl represent someone who believes that if they have this hippie-like mentality about how they're going about things, that nobody will question what they're doing because they just mean well and you just shouldn't take it personal. But that's certainly not how the world works.
They live here. So your statistics are flawed, like all of the rest of YT statistics.
How are they flawed?
Because statistically, black men are not more violent than white men.
They're 20.
That's just not a stated fact.
They're 20.
No. That's just not a stated fact.
Where are your facts?
They literally colonized an entire civilization. White men are inherently violent, right? That's why we have all of this school stuff going on. We're not doing that.
Do you feel safer in a white neighborhood or a black neighborhood?
I feel more safer in a black neighborhood. I do.
When you look at relationship dynamics, white people will sometimes tend to point at black men and they try to bring up things about DV and things like that. But again, we can always counter them with the overwhelming amount of data that proves that when their relationships go bad, they just go ahead and unalive their woman. You don't see a lot of those Scott Peterson situations in the Black community the way you see over there. You don't see a lot of the, oops, my wife went missing. I don't know what happened. We were having some problems and, I don't know where she is. And they're like, why were you just fishing and hanging out and having a good time? He's like, because I'm sad. And they're like, you don't look sad. He's like, I promise you I'm sad.
I don't feel safe around white people. Like, I'm scared of you right now. I'm afraid. Because it's because of the white fatigue. Because, and to answer JR's question, I believe that Black fatigue is the original answer. And I believe that they try to flip it, just like they try to crowbar their way into using the N-word by trying to tell people that that's okay because they now want to say it.
They didn't say that they wanted to say it because they had a desire to say it. They tried to actually flip it on us. They tried to say, well, you guys say it to each other. Well, you guys call each other the N-word like nobody says anything. It's like white people have dominated and colonized everything. So even when it comes to small stuff like this, they can't handle anything that they're left out of. That's something that you notice about white pathology a lot of the times. They just can't be left out of anything. That's the truth. Because I think somewhere in their mind they believe that they own everything. And there are historical reasons to back why they have this kind of confidence. But I don't think that's something that they would really want to get into. It's a different conversation.
And y'all can try to hijack a term that the professor wrote a book about it. You know what I'm saying? So it just goes to show the colonizer mindset that you guys have in your brain. It's literally disgusting. And it's sickening, right? It's like almost like a mental illness to me because there is no way that y'all just really came in and hijacked this term. People can't. When you pull up those statistics, do you know that Black people patent over 50,000 inventions in this country? Do you know that we built institutions? We actually built this country from scratch.
No, you
so
didn't.
when you bring enough statistics, please,
what institutions did you?
Let them finish talking.
We know our history. We know who we are. We know our history, and we know we've been here, and we still here. Like 47% of Black Americans live in a middle class. So that little small degenerate class of people that you like to brag about and y'all like to put on the forefront, we don't like them either. They get shunned by us too. So this whole concept.
She's not lying because we all know what it's like to go by that gas station in our local area and Black people have basically turned the gas pumps into the club and they're all out there hanging outside of their cars, doing whatever they're doing. There's one dude hanging over a car, look like he trapping or whatever the case may be. All of us legitimate Black people, we see that and we drive to another gas station. Also, when we move into areas where people are successful, middle or upper income areas, when we see other Black people move in, we're upset about that. That's true because we understand something about each other. We understand that being Black, there's something to be proud of on some level, but we have a group of our people who have basically ruined it for every other Black person where we pretty much believe that most of our people who look like us are untrustworthy or will try to break in and take our stuff, whatever the case may be, rob us. And we all know that this is true. We just don't like having these conversations amongst white people.
Of Black fatigue doesn't really exist. Like Illa said, it doesn't exist. That's just a people fatigue.
But you can't tell people how to. You can't tell people
like any of those things. So
you can't tell people.
Hold on.
We live under a system of white supremacy right now. We live under a system of white supremacy. That's not gonna change.
Pearl says, you can't tell people how to feel. This is 2025. Of course you can. For example, there are a lot of people who feel like same-sex marriage shouldn't happen. That's just what they feel. But we don't know if they say it in public too loudly, we'll take their job and their money. So that means you're not allowed to feel whatever you want actually in society. There are some white people who still feel this is the Jim Crow era and they can call a Black person the N-word with a hard R on that mug. They have to deal with whatever repercussions come along with that, so they're not allowed to feel that. So again, I disagree disagree, Pearl. You're not allowed to feel whatever you want to feel. A lot of you white people think that your frustration about black people is legitimate, but a lot of times it's projection or it's misplaced guilt.
It's not going to change tomorrow. Currently in 2025, black people live under a system of white supremacy. So to sit on this panel, Pearl, and be disingenuous and act like that doesn't exist, you lying. You lying.
All right. Let me go to get these other folks in before we go ahead and start this debate. Amir, I'm coming to you next with the same question. What does black fatigue mean to you?
I don't know what to say. I mean, I just want to be honest. Like, every single time that we have this type of conversation, I can't speak honestly. I can't, because every time I speak, I get told to shut up. I'm not black. I don't understand why they do the things that they do. If I speak on my observations, I'm seen as hateful. If I speak on pattern recognition, I'm seen as hateful or racist. I don't think that this is a proper panel for me to speak on those options, on those topics. I would love to, but every time that I want to bring out a problem or an issue, it turns into something that is not fruitful.
I think Amir's frustration is reflective of what I expressed earlier. About black people, I'm not sure if we're aware of the fact that we're expressing a disinterest in having these conversations more than we know we're letting off. And I think it's for justifiable reason. I think that we're paranoid. I think we've been mistreated in this country. I think that we've been bamboozled a lot in this country for lack of such a historically used metaphor in regards to how we've been handled. But I say this to say that as you listen to the rest of this conversation, it'll become apparent that even though black people were more on the moral side of things in this conversation, that there's certainly some fine tuning that needs to be done in regards to our ability to take in information from opposing people, because we don't want to have these conversations with the non-black people who we agree with because they're already in agreement and we can't get anything done with that. We need to be able to have the conversations with the people who we disagree with in a productive way to where the conversation can continue to happen so that we can actually get to a solution. It's not going to happen if we remain triggered, even if it's justifiable. Let's get back into it.
I can't. I mean, I don't even want to speak on it because
I would like to know I would like to know what would you say is one of the problems that you observe, Amir, if you're saying there's a problem.
True, you weren't here the last time, or maybe you were. We talked about it briefly, and all I did was
about you, because we all know that black people have a lot of issues. We're from the hood. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I live
about it.
Can I finish talking, please? This is you're expressing why we're upset, because the fact that you think that you're a white woman with 2 million subscribers coming to a black channel, you think that we're supposed to bow to you as you think that you're the face of intelligence on this panel, but you're not. We're gonna let you talk, sweetheart. Just wait. So what I'm saying is, white folks, we all know black people have a lot of issues. It's given. I grew up in the inner city. I've seen the dangers of gangs. I've seen the drama of single parent households. It's not nothing to be proud of. It's terrible. But everything has a chronological order. And one thing about being an American, America loves and values and cherishes history. This country values history. They remind you all the time about the Civil War. They remind you all the time about the Gettysburg Address. They remind you all the time about how this country was founded and how the great forefathers of the past, all cultures venerate their history. So let's not pretend that history has no place on the current time. There's a difference between making excuses and saying how things came about. You build the house, you build your foundation, then you build the walls. It's a chronological order, then you have a house. Black people in this country have been attacked when they behave their best. So for you to make claims as if our behavior is a direct correlation with how we're treated by Europeans, there's no precedence for that, because we have proof that when we did behave a certain way, when we did carry ourselves at the highest levels of civility, we were just not disagreed with, not ostracized, murdered. So if we were murdered when we behaved at our best, that's evidence that our behavior is not what dictates the negative response from Europeans. But you want to talk about numbers, so I'm gonna read some to you.
I think that he's making some great points. And I want to add something to that. I think if you hypothetically think about if Black people were to decide to organize and to separate and do it peacefully and commit to separating from all of our people in our communities who commit crime, all of our violent offenders, we make a public pledge to separate from them. Also, I personally believe that this will be met with hostility from the majority of the country. I believe that somehow this would be flipped as Black people are trying to be divisive, and it would become a reverse racism scenario when in fact it could just be Black people trying to do what they believe is what's in best interest of them, like what the J-word people are allowed to do, what the Hispanic community is allowed to do, what the Arabic community who come to Black communities and build their businesses in are allowed to do, what every other community is allowed to do. I believe if we try to attempt that on any level, I'm not sure if it would be met with positive validation, for lack of a better term. Let's get back into it.
I just want to read this real quick, JR. These, because she loved to bring up numbers. These are stats from sexual abuse offenses. 93.5% of individuals sentenced for sexual abusers were men. 55.1% sexual contact were white. 60.5% of individual cases involved in criminal abuse were Native American. 85% of individual cases involving statutory rape.
We gotta wrap it up, Ella.
I'm just saying, you get the gist of it, because I got information.
I'll just say the difference.
But it's not about being racist.
Ella.
All right, Ella, I just want all you could do is laugh. I ain't lying.
The difference. Yeah, see, that's again.
Pearl, 30 seconds. Pearl, 30 seconds.
White people don't get offended by laughing and smiling. That's just basic respect, decorum, politeness.
I'm not offended by it.
No, y'all definitely get offended when you hear. That's actually micro. That's actually the microaggression.
Let it go.
Let Pearl get up 30 seconds.
I think it's very risky of Pearl to try to speak for white people as a collective. This was when I realized Pearl has gotten so comfortable being amongst Black culture and in these conversations that she hasn't drawn any rules for herself or any boundaries for herself, which is healthy to do when you're dealing with any culture, not just Black people. So just not a good look, I think, for her trying to speak for white people as a whole, because I think that there are way less enlightened white people on this topic than white people who are not enlightened and have really crazy, jaded, evil perspectives on this topic. Let's get back into it.
The second thing is, I think as an adult, you are responsible for your behavior. So I wouldn't blame that on history. I would blame it on your poor life choices if you're somebody that's made a poor life choice. And because I was rudely interrupted, it's okay. I did it too.
But wait a second, Pearl. I think what people like you have a very difficult time doing is connecting you all keeping all of our ancestors, systematically and blatantly keeping our ancestors away from wealth for hundreds of years. And then at the end of that uneven race, you look at the culture that was kept out of wealth and you say, oh, you behave very poorly. You don't know how to act amongst the community of people who has always had access to wealth, even though they stole it, even though they kept hardworking Black people away from it, and all the ancestors of the Black people who you're criticizing, they kept away from that wealth. You don't see any correlation between that history and the current state of Black people. That's going to be a huge disconnect. Let's get back into the clip.
The attitude. Chill out.
Hey, Ella, let her finish so we can go to get the ball. Ella, just mute up, Ella.
That's all right. He could go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Bo. And then we get Cooley now.
For someone else's creation. Like.
Cooley now.
Yeah. You ain't running shit.
Actually, there were more Black fathers in the house, where I think that it was more white fathers. I think there was more Black fathers in the household than there were more white fathers. Per capita is what I mean. So, like, if you look at things, the side effects of
difference is when I say a stat that's negative about Black people, and you're out of 5 Black people, one was lazy, one stole from you, and one did X, Y, and Z. You're gonna be less likely. One called you a colonizer. In the future, you may be less likely to hire them. Again,
okay, one black person called you a colonizer. I'm sorry you had a bad experience with Sour Garvey. You helped elevate his channel, whatever the case may be. The first moment that he went public about how he believed that you have a colonizer mindset. So what? This is another example of how you take in one case, one guy who did you bad, and all of a sudden you're blanketing black people, and we're all just supposed to accept your opinions about black people inherently being problem starters or violent or whatever. Now, I do agree that we have a group of our people who are like this, but I don't think that it well represents black people as a whole, and you don't want to be honest about that.
That's the reputation of the group. People do adapt because it's very expensive to hire an employee that doesn't work out. Like, you have to pay them for months, and it's just.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, so we're talking about the whys, right? If we're talking about the whys, this is the reason why I brought that up is the why. We're saying, why are you feeling like black people aren't up to par? The reason why is because there's actually systemic racism going on. That's a real thing.
Trev, she spoke about the why. She talked about pattern recognition. But the thing is, if she's being logically consistent, she would have to say the probability is much higher for other white people to build up a bigger pattern recognition of other white people. So therefore, they'll probably have either the same or more negative accounts with other white people. If we're being honest, like, think about it. If the white person is the head of the company, they're hiring more whites anyway. So then, therefore, the probability is higher for them to have negative experience with more white people rather than black people. So she is pattern recognition is a real thing. Pattern recognition, we all utilize it, and it helps us to, not make the same mistakes that we made before. You get what I'm saying? It helps us with many different things. But I think that's the part that she was speaking about the why, Trev, but it was just different from the why you were looking for.
Can I? No,
I disagree that there's systemic racism. I think there's more racism against white people.
Of course you do.
Okay, you disagree that there's systemic racism. I might have let you have that one. Not like I agree, but I would let you put it on the table for us to chop it up. But saying that you believe white people experience more racism is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard you say on any platform, ever, at any point of your YouTube career. What? So now white people are experiencing more racism? Oh, Pearl, please do tell. What racism are white people dealing with that is so bad? What neighborhoods are white people going into that they're being questioned if they live in the neighborhood with no reason, like black people are? Black people can't even be successful around white people. Are you crazy? All over the internet, there's nothing but black people basically being harassed for living in a nice cul-de-sac neighborhood. There's nothing but black people on TikTok with videos defending themselves from white people who just believe that they shouldn't be there, even though they actually do live there. White people are not having these kind of experiences. White people, you guys are cussing at the police. You guys are yelling at the police. You're doing all different type of things that if we did it, we would get our ass Rodney King. And you guys know we would. You know that we would. You guys know that you can get away with more with the police. This is so dishonest. But again, I think that you're stepping in shit here because you're getting too comfortable. Like, you could be a respected white person in these conversations, but if you say things that aren't true and appear jaded, people are going to start to assume bad things about you because it is risky being a white person in these conversations, and you adopted that risk when you started getting on these panels.
You recognize that when it's impossible for it to happen to you.
Well, I mean, even by that fact, you're saying it's impossible for me to experience racism.
Systemic racism. It's impossible.
Well, again, that just kind of goes back to that's a cop out. Like, I just think
cop out. First off,
there's a lot of. Do you want to hear my opinion, or do you just want to?
Go ahead.
I mean, there's a bunch of scholarships that are given. Like, when I was in high school, there was a black guy who got like a 27 on his ACT, and he got into Notre Dame because there are specific scholarships for black people there. The white guy in my class, he got a 32 and he didn't get in.
Pearl. That's because of the historic disparagement that I just explained. That because historically, white people have kept wealth away from black people. Opportunities for education, inventions, and all type of things. There are going to be some black people who will skip the line because of that, because they actually care about that historic disadvantage and that historic disparagement that black people experienced. Black people being kept out of wealth, employment, discrimination, redlining, and so on and so forth. They care about it. You don't. Let's get back into the clip.
Scholarships are wrongfully awarded to black people more than anyone else.
I'm not saying that it's wrong or right. I'm saying there are specific.
No. Did you hear the question? I said, are you going to go on the record saying that there are more scholarships awarded wrongfully to black people than any other race? That's what I asked.
Again, I didn't say wrong or right. I said the fact is there are specific scholarships. It's the same with women, right? There's specific scholarships that are made for women. There's pretty much specific scholarships for everyone.
That kind of sounds like a deflection.
I did really enjoy today, but my boyfriend, I told him I'd be done by 10, so I do have to go.
I bet.
As soon as I showed up, I am the
rage quit. Rage quit.
Oh, we could do it again.
Super villain. Rage
quit.
But I told him I'd get on it.
Can I just ask you one question before you leave? Can I just ask you one question?
I don't use
super villain is here.
Can I ask you one question before you depart?
Gotta go. I'll see you guys.
Rage quit. That's a rage quit.
It's not a rage.
I bet.
I'll see you guys. Do it again.
Nah, the super villain is here.
Y'all scared her off.
What up?
Peace of the Saints. Thank you for. I don't know who added me on, but whoever it was, I appreciate you sharing your platform with me.
Shout out to Saint the Center. Pearl, not a good look. Why didn't you want to have the conversation with him? Maybe it's because he has a reputation for having a more aggressive style of conversation that you didn't want to have to deal with. You were very candid and confident with everyone else, and who was going to give you the space to let off those really, really bad ideas. What's the problem with you having a conversation with Saint? It wasn't that he is really intellectual on the topic and of the most advanced of us in regards to having these type of conversations. He's an articulate black man, and he grew up in Baltimore, so he has experience as a black man you can't discount, along with talking points you probably can't refute. Very, very bad look. Shame on you for being somebody who has a reputation. You've stepped up to all type of debates. You've debated people on TV. You've debated people on all type of national levels. Pierce Morgan, all type of stuff. And a black man of intellect shows up to the panel, and you ran like a scared chicken.
Shaming yourself. Ain't nobody shaved.
Doesn't look good. I wouldn't be surprised if you even lose some subs behind it. It's not the type of thing that people in these conversations should get to do, void of reproach. I think that when you're challenged, you should step up to the plate, and I think that was very cowardly of you to run from a Saint like that, and it proves that you're not ready to have these conversations with people who you know can kick your ass. Hit the subscribe button, also the notification bell, so you're notified every single time we post content just like this. See you guys on the next one.